Hey there, friends. Dave Paulides, CanAm Missing Project. Copyrighted edition for our video channel. Huck's asleep right under me. Try not to bother her. It's about 90 degrees in the Flathead Valley. Steaming. And thank you, Canada. We are getting a lot of your smog from your dozens of fires in British Columbia and Alberta. Keep reading stories that you guys are just getting blown out up there because of the smoke, and it hurts my soul to hear that happening because I love your area. But I find it extraordinarily strange that you have dozens and dozens of fires that started just overnight. Seems weird, especially when there were no thunderstorms up there. But this is CanAm Missing Project, copyrighted edition for our video channel. This is a missing persons video. So if you're looking for something else, yep. And this is about a case in Illinois, just north of the Missouri border, just north of St. Louis. So in my past books, I've spoke about farmers that have disappeared. I spoke about farmers' kids who disappeared. And there's always something very, very odd that goes with it. Now, I've read a lot of cases about during the Depression where farmers took their own lives. This isn't a case like that. And in fact, it took me probably 3 or 4 days of research to figure this case out. Something's told me to just stick with it. Usually after several hours of researching, if I can't figure something out, I'll just move on. But I stuck with this case. You've never heard about it before. Well, I'm sure you're going to hear about it again when other people copy my channel. But this is worth looking into. Now, there are cases that I've done right around St. Louis, and there's a cluster of missing people almost in this exact area that we're talking about. Now, there's a couple big rivers that flow through this area. Not far at all, 5 miles, 10 miles away. And it kind of fits with the profile of an area that we'd research. This involves a man named Henry Meeden, M-E-E-D-E-N, 68 years old. He went missing March 4th, 1940 at about 6 p.m. He was a farmer. That would have been his occupation, probably on his tax return. But he was really a remodeler. He was single. What he'd do is he'd find a dilapidated farmhouse where people lived. He'd go in there and buy the property cheap and remodel the farmhouse to impeccable condition. And then he'd turn it and sell it. That's really how he made all his money. And there were rumors in many of the articles that he had a lot of money in an Alton bank account. This incident happened in Fosterburg, Illinois, 5 miles north of Alton and about a mile west of Fosterburg. At the time of this incident, Henry owned a 24-acre parcel of fruit trees. But again, that really isn't why he was there. He was about 80-90% done with remodeling a farmhouse. And people had come by and they were blown away how nice he made it. And he already had several offers to buy the property. Key points. People stated that he was fastidiously clean. Not something you always hear about in a single farmer. But they said the house was unbelievable and his land was kept that same way. And being a single guy, every morning he would walk to a neighbor's farm, the Wellings farm, and sit down and have breakfast. And sometimes he'd come back at night for dinner. He was very close to the Wellings. Well, he had breakfast on Monday, March 4th. Everything seemed normal. He didn't come that night for dinner. And the Wellings said that sometimes he didn't come for dinner, but he always came for breakfast. And on that Tuesday morning, March 5th, he didn't show up for breakfast. Well, Mrs. Welling told her husband Lawrence to go check on Henry's house. Lawrence went over to the Meedens' residence. Door was unlocked. He walked in. Everything seemed appropriate. His work boots were gone. He always wore a corduroy hat. That was gone. There was a small cup on the table with $70 in it. But Henry wasn't there. So Mr. Welling went home, thought, well, maybe he's in the field, maybe he's somewhere. Later that afternoon, early evening, Mr. Welling went back, found the same conditions at the residence. Nobody there. And he decided to call the sheriff's office. The character of Mr. Meeden was consistent, never missed breakfast. This was totally out of character. Well, the sheriff, named Whitman, arrived, searched the Meeden home, proclaimed that everything looked normal in the house. Nothing appeared to be missing. All appeared to be normal. Sheriff said if he left the home voluntarily. Another key point. Now, again, if you've read my books, you know I've written a lot about farmers and their relatives and their kids, nieces, nephews. And about several of these people have been found in locations that are absurd. People always keep a top on their cesspool. Many times, these people are found in a cesspool with the top on. Very odd. And this is in the middle of nowhere. Other times, they're found in locations that are equally absurd. Now again, it wasn't about the fourth day of researching this disappearance that I stumbled onto some things that blew my mind, which is why I'm telling you about this. So March 7th, search had started. The sheriff's deputy had called in a series of favors from local farmers, ranchers, and friends, and they all responded to the Meeden property. He also got the laborers in Alton, a union, to suspend work and send 25 men to the Meeden property. Deputy Bassett from the local sheriff's office got more people to show up at the Meeden ranch than anyone could imagine. They first did a massive search of the 4-bedroom home that Henry was remodeling. Nothing. They searched the basement. Nothing. They searched every well that they said that Meeden could have been in and found nothing. Well, at about this time, the niece of Henry heard about her uncle's disappearance and spoke to the sheriff's office. She said that on March 1st, after Henry had breakfast with the Wellings, she stopped by. She lived just a mile away. Her uncle gave her a check and asked her to deposit it for him. She said, no problem. Henry was known as someone who would give loans to local farmers and ranchers without the need of credit checks, etc., and without charging exorbitant rates, more like a good friend to make a little extra money. Well, that's how he got this check. And then he said he was in good spirits, he was feeling good, and that was the last time she had seen him. Well, the search on March 7th found nothing. March 8th and 9th, Deputy Bassett ordered all pools of water dynamited and cleared, and creeks and rivers were dragged. There were several old coal mines in the area that had water built up in them. They were searched. The water was dissipated and blown up. Nothing was found in any of these, even though they were all close by. rivers, ponds, and creeks took an enormous amount of time because they had to be dragged. And several of the searchers were dragging these, and the process took several days. Deputy Bassett also pulled in a huge favor from a pilot that was from the Wood River Airport nearby. The pilot volunteered to fly for 2 hours over the property and adjacent properties. And he flew at a 400-foot elevation at 40 miles per hour with an observer who stated that they could see everything on the ground. And in fact, they had actually seen rabbits on the ground per the articles. While this was going on, the posse that was organized by Mr. Bassett, Deputy Bassett, was searching shoulder to shoulder through fields, through woods, through bogs. Nothing. They were stunned. More stunning than anything to me was finding out that this community committed 14 days to searching for Henry Meeden. I think even today, 14 days for a farmer would almost be unheard of anywhere in North America. But to think about how much they thought about Henry, how much he did for the community, how much he was loved, says a lot. Again, I researched this thoroughly. It was true, 14 days. So, March 17th. Just as the search is winding down, a neighbor, Mrs. Mary Houseman, went to get water from her well. And she had been getting water consistently for the period of time that Henry was missing. This time, as she was lowering her bucket, it hit something on the way down. Hadn't hit it before. She looked down in the well and she saw a body. She called the sheriff. Now, she was a neighbor of Henry's, not directly next to, but very close. A volunteer arrived with the sheriff and worked his way down into the well via a ladder, tied a rope that the sheriff gave it to him around the body, and they pulled it up. It was Henry Meeden. He was completely dressed, had his cap on. The sheriff stated that this was the only well in a 5-mile radius that had not been searched. He stated that the well had a specially designed hinged cover. The coroner arrived, and the coroner and the sheriff both tried to see if they could enter the well and simultaneously close the cover behind them. The coroner stated, this is a quote, "It's an impossible feat for one person." Remember that. An impossible feat for one person. Sheriff went back to the house. Stated Henry left no notes. Re-interviewed the niece, who said that Henry was in good spirits, had given her a check to cash, was imminently close to finishing his house. But in the last several days, nobody had been at the house because it had been incredibly cold in the area. Weather was bad. Now this is a conundrum. If the coroner states that one person can't do this, how did it happen? Well, that's a very good question. Henry was not a small man, 6 foot tall, about 165 pounds. I don't care who you are. Carrying somebody of that weight and that size is incredibly difficult. And this happened on a farm, and a woman found the body. And she stated that she had been getting water out of that well for 2 weeks. Well, this made huge news in Illinois papers. Huge. And a woman and her husband, Mr. and Mrs. Robert Sons, S-O-N-S, Sons, contacted the sheriff. They said, hey, we don't really know if this means anything, but we want to tell you. And they explained that the night Henry disappeared, which would have been March 4th, Monday night, they saw something strange. Their property was next to Henry's. And in their pasture, where their cows would normally have been, but there were none, they saw a light bobbing around, moving around through the pasture. They thought it might be a flashlight. They didn't think much about it, didn't quite understand why anyone would be in that pasture that late at night. And the only possible person that was up late ever was Mrs. Houseman, the person who found Henry's body. They spoke to her and she said, why would I be out in a field in the middle of the night with a flashlight? Of course it wasn't me. If you know farmers and ranchers, they don't stay up late and they get up really early in the morning, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So at 2 or 3 in the morning, no, they're not up. What was moving through that field? You know what I was thinking. So the sheriff and the coroner hold an inquest, and they proclaim that there's no foul play involved. I find that highly unusual, but their statement was that Henry was found fully dressed, upright, wearing his corduroy cap, lid was closed on the well, and the owner stated that they had never found the lid open. They had always closed it. The coroner listed an open verdict with no cause of death. Ka-ching. Think about that. No. Henry, good spirits. Just got a check. Was imminently going to sell another house. His niece said everything was fine. Why give the niece a check and ask her to deposit it in your bank account if you were going to go take your life? See how this doesn't make sense? But Henry was a man of routine. Every morning he went, had breakfast at the Welling home. Every morning. Following morning, he didn't show up. Now, is it just a big coincidence that it just so happens that the Sons see a weird light in the field the night that Henry disappeared? If a coroner and a sheriff say it's impossible to enter a well and close the lid behind you, isn't that in and of itself suspicious? Unknown cause of death, isn't that suspicious? If he didn't have any mentally ill issues, why would he be in the well voluntarily? Now, that bobbing light in the field just happened to be the night that Henry disappears, close to 2 main rivers. Very stable man. Let's talk about orbs for a second, those lights. When you go back into history and you look at unusual lights, they wouldn't be called orbs back 100 years ago. But these have been around for eons. Strange lights in the sky, strange lights in the forest, strange lights in the fields. Now, are all these lights good? Yeah. If you've been watching my Skinwalker Ranch series, you'll know that many of these orbs have been associated with bad things, deaths of animals, etc. So to think that these orbs are all good is ridiculous. Now, what do I think happened? Well, Henry really wasn't a rancher or a farmer. He was a remodeler, like I said. And sometimes he worked late into the night working on his homes. I think Henry worked late. I think he saw something in that field. Just like the son saw it. I think there's a good chance he walked out there to see what it was and something happened. I also think that rather than leaving the body in the field, something, someone, an entity disposed of it. And it shows their lack of respect for us as people. And I do believe that there are some entities out there that don't respect us. And all you have to do is look at history. In Brazil, there's been a series of disappearances of people, UFO related, that have come back in horrible condition. Not given a lot of press, but look it up. South American abductions, killings, etc. Now, like I said, there's been other disappearances within 60 miles of Fosterburg, and I've chronicled them in my books. I've always found farming and ranching disappearances some of the most unusual cases. I've written about a young girl who disappeared, who was later found in the middle of a field with a broken neck. Coroner stated that it would be impossible for her to break her neck by merely falling, like you and I walking and falling. It's probably one of the most critical cases I've ever talked about. The coroner couldn't figure out how she got in the middle of the field because they couldn't find any tracks, down stalks, etc. They couldn't figure out how she broke her neck, etc., etc., etc. Well, remember, these entities have the ability to move you at will. They have an ability to go through walls. They have an ability to put you wherever they want. And if you watched Missing 411, the UFO Connection, you will understand what I mean. I'm not plucking this out of the hocus pocus world. I'm actually telling you facts. And if you follow UFO abductees, if you follow the facts, you know, as an example in our movie, the man I highlighted was abducted in the middle of a hunting expedition in Wyoming and later dropped on a mountainside and rolled down. Which that in and of itself, to me, solved so many of these cases where people said, oh, he fell down a cliff, oh, he fell over this bluff. I don't think they all were that way. Because as I've explained, when people are alone, they act different than if they're with a group. And when I'm alone in the woods, I'm very careful, as are you. Now, the Henry Meeden case, some people may discount it. That's fine. But the questions you have to ask yourself: how did Henry die? Number one, was the man willing to die? Did he have a reason to die? That's number 2. Was he suicidal? Number 3, no evidence. Number 4, he was loved by the community. Why would he go and put himself in the well of another rancher's property? Why not just take your life in your own well? Right. And the big point. This is really important. The well that he was found in had been used for the 2 weeks prior to Henry being found. How is that possible if Henry was in that well for 2 weeks that he wasn't discovered by the owner? Because she said she had been going to the well for 2 weeks, dropped the bucket in, and it hit something. But it didn't hit something the previous times. The question, where was Henry for 2 weeks? A major key point that people miss. Do I think he was in that well? No. But where was he? Now, when abductees are taken, they're taken for anywhere from 1 day to 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Look up the Travis Walton incident, Fire in the Sky. Travis was gone for several days. Where was he? What did they do to him? Watch the story. It's a good movie about it, Fire in the Sky. Something unusual happened to Henry. Do I think that he avoided searchers for 2 weeks and then plopped himself in that well? Heck no. No. There were hundreds of people around his property and all these properties. Somebody would have seen him. But nobody saw Henry. Our world is much more unusual than many would tend to believe. I get comments occasionally from people that say, oh, I'm a conspiracy theorist. Oh, I like to just make things up. Oh, I'm always looking for something when there's nothing. Numerous articles on the Henry Meeden case called it a complete mystery. Not my words, journalists' words. I'm bringing to you facts and a little supposition about what happens in our world. In Missing 411, The Hunted, my second movie, I talked to you about an entity that was in the trees that was seen by a hunter. They called it the predator effect. You could kind of see that something was there, but you could see through it kind of. And it moved from one tree to the other. The predator effect. If you watch the movie The Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger, that was where the comment came from. Since that movie was made, I've probably heard from 50 hunters from around the world that have seen things very similar to that. People don't know where to go. People don't know who to talk to. People don't know who to trust. And they don't want to be made fun of. I'm not going to make fun of you. No, I won't. I want to hear your stories. You can write to me at canammissing.com. You can write to me at missing411@yahoo.com, canammissing@yahoo.com. Our website to follow the books is nabigfootsearch.com. Our movies are available right now for you to watch on Amazon. And you can rent them really cheap. You don't even have to pay hardly anything. But I've made 3 movies. Missing 411. Made by the co-director, my son Ben Paulides. Second movie, Missing 411, The Hunted. Third one, Missing 411, The UFO Connection. Appreciate it if you watched it. It would help with your understanding. You can get the books, my books, at most libraries. You don't have to buy them. you did buy them, it helped me, but it's really about getting you educated about what's going on. In the meantime, love your family. Love your animals. I love Huck. She's one of my best buddies in the whole world. And if you don't have a dog, it's probably hard for you to understand. So be safe. Do something. When you're out in public, today or tomorrow, do something for someone in need. You go by, somebody needs help in a store or in the parking lot, or somebody has a flat tire, pull over and help them. It doesn't cost you anything. Smile at people. It costs nothing. Paulides out.